It is good to be here. I am thankful for many things. One, the safe journey over, and also to be able to be back here tonight with some of my favorite people. You guys mean a lot to me, and thankful to get to be here anytime the message comes through and the invitation to come speak here. I began immediately to look forward to that opportunity because it is something that is a blessing for me. Now, we're going to, it's kind of one of those deals that, they've done a little bit of changing on the time, and I had broke some lessons down because we're actually going to kind of do something. If you did it by season, we're kind of going to hit on all of the seasons and end up in the winter. Because the part of this that was used was Solomon. And there's about 3 different ways this lesson could go. And of course, I'm a reactionary speaker. I kind of look at the situation, the audience, and that type of thing. And then also, you react to maybe what the day has brung or something maybe that was said or those types of things. So it could be that we could look at, and go back and read in 1 Kings where it recounts a lot of Solomon's life, and that would be a good study. Or maybe we could look at his writings that he wrote and see some things and understand some very good lessons from those writings. We're going to combine that. We're going to look at some of the things in 1 Kings eventually. But we're going to look starting in some of the things that Solomon wrote. And we're going to then look at some things that he learned from those to where, when the winter came, he was a good servant. This is a VBS class on Wednesday night. And it's one of those things, as I was beginning to put this together and think about some of these types of things, I thought, it doesn't happen very often. Usually it's a sad situation when it does, when you stand in a pulpit and there are none that are very young in attendance. But tonight, they've been here, but they've went to their classes. And oftentimes, when you begin to think about Solomon, at whatever stage of his life, we forget some things. I'm going to make this announcement as I tell you to be turning your Bibles to the book of the Song of Solomon. If you are live streaming this and you have small children there that you don't want to hear some things that are fairly graphic, distract them. Most of the time in the pulpit, oftentimes even in classes, we don't read the book, Song of Solomon. When you get there to the 7th chapter, I want you to read with me starting in verse 1. It says, "How beautiful are thy feet with shoes, O princess daughter. The joints of thy thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a cunning workman. Thy navel is like a round goblet which wanteth not liquor. Thy belly is like a heap of wheat set about with lilies. Thy 2 breasts are like 2 young roes that are twins. The neck is as a tower of ivory, thine eyes like the fish pools of Heshbon. By the gate of Bathrabbim, thy nose is as the tower of Lebanon which looketh toward Damascus." We're going to stop there for just a minute. Gentlemen, don't use these compliments because we don't understand them as well as they might. I don't exactly know what these mean, but I can tell you this. These words were written as a great compliment to the one they were being penned to. Now, there were some things in there that are very graphic, but here's the thing. That's something that, and in your mind, in an assembly like this, we're grown-ups. We understand that we could probably look at these things, looking at the feelings, the emotions that he had, and we could put them in the proper season, couldn't we? We could get an idea of when those words were the things that were more thought about. But I want us to think about this, and I want us to know and understand these were some of the writings of Solomon. And some say, well, why would you read that? Now, that's something that should be read in the privacy of your own home and those types of things. And I agree. There's some graphic things here. But I'm going to tell you something that you don't have to be guessing at. These are things you're aware of. You know these things. You've seen it. You've witnessed it in your lives, people that you know. These things, this idea of this physical, fleshly desire was not peculiar just to Solomon in these writings. It affects everyone who has ever lived, oftentimes negatively. And unfortunately, what has happened is religion as a whole, the Lord's church, quite frequently has kind of brushed these things under the rug and not talked about them, kind of made them hush-hush, and unfortunately caused us to sin in relations to these ideas of the physical relationship. You know, I couldn't help but think of contrasting this. If you turn over to the book of Proverbs, you know, if you start the very first, and we'll look at it just kind of giving us an idea, the very first verse in the Proverbs, in chapter 1 and verse 1, it says, the Proverbs of Solomon, the son of David, king of Israel. So we've got a lot more things written by Solomon. But I want you to notice something with me. Because now you got to remember, all those things that were written aforetime, they were written for our learning. The Song of Solomon was written for our learning. We've touched on it. We've looked at it just a little bit. But you remember, you go through the first 29 chapters in Proverbs, and then you get to chapter 30, and it talks about the words of Agur, the son of Jacob. Then I want us to look at Proverbs 31, probably one of the most familiar proverbs to all of us in here, when it talks about, at the very first verse, the words of King Lemuel, the prophecy that his mother taught him. Now I want you to think about this, if you will. Here we have Solomon has written these very graphic words in Song of Solomon toward this Shulamite. He has been very descriptive in his attraction to this woman. He writes the first 29 Proverbs, and then you get to 30 and 31, and it's like God said, okay, here's something that needs to be written about a virtuous woman. And you can read in Proverbs 31, 10 and following, and that virtuous woman whose price is far above rubies. And it goes on and has descriptive words, very descriptive words. But notice how we're not afraid to read Proverbs 31, because those things, there's no physical imagery in our minds. It doesn't stir up that kind of thought. But yet, very descriptive none the same. It's kind of an interesting part with this. It's like God knows exactly when he was inspiring writers to pen these words, he knew their strengths and he knew their weaknesses. And here's the thing, as you go through seasons of life, our strengths and weaknesses change. You know, you think about the idea of the physical, that desire of those types of things, the very physical, even sexual desire, it changes as we go through life. This idea of the virtuous woman and those types of things, those characteristics may change as we go through the seasons of life. Here's what we are, and just think about this, if you will. Even in this example of these pictures we have up here, these displays that we have, notice there is an assumption there. You know what it is? The assumption is that we're even going to get a winter. You do realize a lot of people don't make it out of spring. They don't make it through summer. Fall is hard on them. And not just physically in the loss of physical life, but many people, whether it be through these physical things that we talked about in Song of Solomon, whether it be the things here of this virtuous woman, our diligence declines. We're not guaranteed a winner. If you go back, I told you we'd read 1 Kings just a little bit. Some of the things that are written there. You get to the 11th chapter in 1 Kings, and you see the writer there. When he begins and writes this recollection and says, "But King Solomon loved many strange women." I want you to think about this with me. Just imagine, play this through with me. Let's just say God had continued inspiring Solomon to, after chapter 29 in Proverbs, he just kept writing right on through 30. And he gets over into 31 and he pens those beautiful words about a virtuous woman. All the things, those characteristics. It ends up down there, and you'll see this idea that her husband praises her. Her children rise up and call her blessed. Imagine if Solomon had written that, and then we read this in 1 Kings 11 when it said, "But King Solomon loved many strange women." As a phrase we use now might say, that would not have aged very well, would it? Had Solomon penned those words in Proverbs 31, all of a sudden people would have said, "Well, evidently, it's okay." Of course, it lists all of the different ones, daughters of Pharaoh's, women of the Moabites, Ammonites, and he pretty much just hit it all. Said no to nothing. We got a lot we can learn from a book like Song of Solomon that we just don't read. But if it doesn't help us to understand that God gave these men utterance, He breathed, as it were, all Scripture given by God, inspired by God, breathed by God. This should help us understand that. There's some more things. Let's go to the book of Ecclesiastes. That part of this is over. We're going to look at kind of the next topic, so to speak. You know, this book has become one of my favorites. Ecclesiastes, the very first chapter. We're going to start reading there in verse 1. You've heard it. You've read it. The words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, saith the preacher, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What profit hath a man of all his labor, which he taketh under the sun? One generation passeth away, another generation cometh, but the earth abideth forever. Now remember a while ago when I said those feelings that Solomon was writing about, those very strong physical feelings, you can put very easily into these seasons, right? Well, guess what? This line of thinking is the same way, isn't it? Do you remember how old you were when you began to think about, now some of you folks back here are younger, okay? You won't understand what I'm saying, just understand it's coming, okay? Get that. That, look, someday I'm not going to be here, and whatever is mine will be somebody else's. You might begin to do this. Tell the kids, "Hey, if something happens to me, this is yours, and that's yours." Or I've written this out here, or they've got this. Here's what I want done with this. Most of y'all should already be talking about that. Most of us should already be talking about that. You can begin to see something here, and you can kind of place that in the proper season, right? Notice verse 8. All things are full of labor, man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor the ear filled with hearing. Jump on down to verse 13. And I gave my heart to seek and search out by wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This sore travail hath God given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. I have seen all the works that are done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and vexation of spirit. Some of y'all, maybe you can look through these series of seasons and think about the times when you just went out and killed yourself at work. Worked all the overtime that you could work, anything extra that you could pick up. You were fighting and scratching and clawing and all of those types of things. That happens sometimes in some of these seasons. But then one day, some of these things that Solomon writes here in Ecclesiastes, we begin to hear these things, think on these things. Even if, I'm going to tell you something. If somebody has never picked up the Bible, they go through this exact same thing. When they realize that is the labor of this life, this world, these things, all worth it? Let's go back. Let's look in 1 Kings. Again, we're going to make a point here in a moment that I hope you understand. Because now I want you to realize what Solomon has just come to the realization of over in Ecclesiastes. He's had it all. He's done it all. In the whole scheme of things, it doesn't amount to much. Go back to 1 Kings chapter 3. I want you to simply read verse 5 with me. In Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream by night, and God said, "Ask what I shall give thee." Okay? Now, fast forward down to verse 9 with me. Here's what he asked for. "Give therefore thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people, that I may discern between good and bad. For who is able to judge this, thy so great a people?" And the speech pleased the Lord that Solomon had asked this thing. And God said unto him, "Because thou hast asked this thing, and hast not asked for thyself long life, neither hast asked riches for thyself, nor hast asked the life of thine enemies, but hast asked for thyself understanding to discern judgment. Behold, I have done according to thy words. Lo, I have given thee a wise and understanding heart, so that there was none like thee before thee, neither after thee shall any arise like unto thee. And I have also given thee that which thou hast not asked, both riches and honor, so that there shall not be any among the kings like unto thee all the days. And if thou wilt walk in my ways and keep my statutes and my commandments, as thy father did walk, then I will lengthen thy days." Did you ever realize that the understanding that Solomon came to in the book of Ecclesiastes was what he had prayed for in 1 Kings? Have you ever heard the old saying, you got to be careful what you wish for? We're Christian people. You better be careful what you pray for. You better be careful what you pray for. Because what if you get it? We're going to flip over. We're not going to read a lot of New Testament stuff tonight, but I want you to, if you know your Bibles well, and I know that you do, flip over to Colossians real quick with me. We're going to look at one verse, no context, nothing. The book of Colossians. You'll get over there to chapter 4. This is Paul. You know how he does. He has a good introduction. And then he starts his ending. Usually there's about a chapter, what we've got. About a chapter left, he'll start his ending. So we're in the ending of Paul's letter to the Colossians. Verse 3, he says, "Withal, praying also for us, that God would open unto us a door of utterance to speak the mystery of Christ, for which I am also in bonds." Now, we tend to make the point here a lot of times that he asked that a door of utterance is opened and he's imprisoned, okay? Paul needed to be very careful about what he was praying for here, right? Because what if that door of utterance had a stoning in it, or maybe a beating in it, or maybe a shipwreck? Well, guess what? That door of utterance did have those things. Just like we see Solomon pray, and here's the great thing about this. Solomon was somewhere down in here in his seasons, right? He prayed a prayer that pleased God. And by the time he got there, he realized it was vanity. Not because it was what God gave him, but it was because of what he did with it. I tell people this. I have people come all the time and they say, would you pray for my so-and-so that they'll hear the gospel? And my response is, I will, but what if it's you've got to take it to them? Is that the answer you want? Because what if that's the answer? What if the door of utterance to my grandma, my mom, my whoever is through you? Do you see how that what you pray for can become vanity if we don't steward it properly? The things we do in this season, the things we might even pray for here, by the time we get there, don't mean as much anymore. They're not important to us or as important to us as they once were. Ecclesiastes again. Second chapter this time. I hope most people's Bibles have Ecclesiastes. Mine actually, this is one of the very few times that mine works out perfect. Okay? If I hold my Bible up, Ecclesiastes chapter 2, the 2's right up here at the top of the page. So that means the majority, I've got 17 verses of Ecclesiastes 2 on one page. I'm hoping that you've got somewhere in the neighborhood of about 11 verses, real easy for you to look at. We're going to read just a little bit of it, but then we're going to stop and we're going to do something a little bit different. Start in verse 1 of chapter 2 with me. I said in mine heart, go to now, I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore enjoy pleasure. Behold, this also is vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of mirth, what doeth it? I sought in mine heart to give myself unto wine, yet acquainting mine heart with wisdom, to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was that good for the sons of men, which they should do unto the heaven all the days of their life. I want you to do something with me from that point on. Basically verses 4 through 11, and it actually goes a little further than this. And I want you to notice, verse 4, I made, I builded, I planted, I made, I planted, I made. Verse 7, I got. Do you see a problem here? You see a problem here? I. Isn't that something else that tends to happen? We can go way down in here and do this first season. We had some first season up here, right? A lot of the first season left. Y'all get that, right? Most of the first season ain't in this room. What's one of the hardest things to teach in the first season? It's mine. That's mine. I want. Right? It's one of the hardest things to teach. Guess what? Sometimes it's pretty tough here. I've even seen people here have trouble with it. And oh, by the way, it's really serious when it goes all the way to there. This should sound familiar to you. Flip over to Luke chapter 12. You get over there. You see Jesus Christ speaking a parable starting in verse 16. And he spake a parable unto them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man brought forth plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, because I have no room where to bestow my fruits? And he said, this will I do. I will pull down my barns, build greater, and there will I bestow all my fruits and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, thou hast much goods laid up for many years. Take thine ease, eat, drink, and be merry. Notice verse 20. But God said unto him, thou fool. Now I want us to pause right here just a moment. Does this not sound exactly like what the reasoning that Solomon came to in Ecclesiastes chapter 2? The I, here's what I did all this. And of course he goes on to say that all of that stuff is no profit under the sun. It's vanity and vexation of spirit in Ecclesiastes 2 and 11. Do you want to know what realization Solomon came to in Ecclesiastes chapter 2? That he had been a fool. But he was the wisest. Isn't that amazing? A man God called the wisest who ever was, ever will be, realized because of what he had done, he had become a fool. From the time of Solomon to the time of Jesus was a long time. And I will guarantee you this. When Jesus spoke that parable about the one who said, I, and thou fool, he thought of Solomon. You know how I know that? Because we serve an all-knowing God. He knew Solomon. And in that, he wanted to make sure that, yes, because here's what happens. We go back and we read a book like Ecclesiastes, and what do? Well, that's a long time ago. That's Old Testament. We're New Testament Christians, right? Jesus said, this is such a serious problem. My people need to hear it again. Because the wisest man realized in Ecclesiastes he was a fool. Wouldn't it be nice if we spent so much time in the Bible that it just became so familiar to us? Because remember earlier, we walked through and we talked about those first 29 Proverbs, the 29 chapters in the book of Proverbs, and how God didn't inspire Solomon to keep on writing in chapters 30 and 31. One, because we read in 31, the virtuous woman needed to be written by somebody that it would age well, not someone who spoke so much about the physical attraction toward a woman, which there's nothing wrong with that in its proper place. I want to tell you, the Bible's stout when you read it. Go to Proverbs chapter 30. It's another proverb Solomon didn't write. And I want you to see if this doesn't say exactly from another writer what he had just come to the realization of. Proverbs chapter 30, let's read verse 8, starting. Now think about this. What was the prayer that Solomon prayed? Give me wisdom. God said, okay, here's wisdom, and here's riches and all of that, right? I want you to notice what the proverb here in verse 8 of chapter 30. Remove far from me vanity and lies. Okay? What do we read in Ecclesiastes? Vanity of vanity, all is vanity. Remember all the things, I, all the labor, all the stuff that I have been a partaker of, everything. It is vanity and vexation of spirit. This writer in Proverbs 30 says, remove far from me vanity. I don't know how old this Agur, the son of Jacob, was. I don't know what season of life this proverb was written in. But amen that he came to this conclusion. Because he says, and I love this passage. If you've never, I'll be honest with you. I know I've read this before, but I read this today and it hit me like a ton of bricks. Give me neither poverty nor riches. We're all grown-ups here. I'm going to ask you tonight, and I'm asking me, can you go home and pray that prayer? Because if you can, you're in a good spot. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Well, we live in a rich country, don't we? Goes on and says, feed me with food convenient for me. That's not the stout part. Notice what he says in verse 9. Lest I be full and deny thee and say, who is the Lord? Or lest I be poor and steal and take the name of my God in vain. But wouldn't it be nice if you accomplished nothing else in this VBS? If all we could do, we've got a VBS coming up in July. Imagine if every young person, I'll tell you what we're going to do. There was a section right in here, kind of teenage class, right? Imagine if they left here tonight with the understanding and their goal was to be able to pray this prayer, give me neither poverty nor riches. It sounds like godliness with contentment, doesn't it? Yeah, it's exactly what it is. That is exactly what it is. You know what? There's a lot of Christians, of course you don't think about it down there. Boy, you really are here. There's a lot of Christians don't get that all the way through winter until this life is over. There are many people, many Christians in the winter of life who still could not make those statements. We're going to end with the goal. The goal for us. It's in the Old Testament. It's a powerful teaching. When you get over to the end of the book of Ecclesiastes, Ecclesiastes chapter 12, the final words of Solomon are being written. The man that God said was the wisest. We have 29 chapters of Proverbs. And I'm going to tell you, I know, it's kind of one of those deals. You may have a daily Bible reading or something. Sometime over the next few days, just flip your Bible open to one of those 29 chapters of Proverbs and just kind of start reading. Light reading, not studying, just reading. There's a lot of wise sayings there that would do us all good to make it a part of our lives and strive to do better at. But if you don't, remember this verse that is so familiar to all of us, Ecclesiastes chapter 12 and verse 13. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Some translations put it this way, for it is the whole of man. Because some people, you do realize that in the religious world, there are some people don't like that word duty. They don't. Sounds like a work, doesn't it? And there's some truth to that. But here's what I'm going to promise you. Whether you put the word duty in there or it's just the whole of man, it is to be who we are, fearing God and keeping his commandments. You see that last white board down there? That's where the wisest man to ever live figured that out. Guess what? There are some in here that are in that season. You realize that, right? There are some here tonight that are in that season. And you should thank the God of heaven that if you hadn't figured out these things yet, it took the wisest man to ever live that season to figure it out. Because that means you can as well. Now here, you know, I might be standing right about the right place. I don't know, what would you put summer to fall? I don't know, I'm 52. We'll go with that. Biblically, here's what I know. Go look this up. I could not carry the Ark of the Covenant. Did y'all know that? You had to be under 50. But let's say that even I'm here. I can't wait on that season to discern, fear God, keep His commandments. This is the whole duty of man. I can't wait till there. I've got sons and daughter-in-laws that are here. I need them to know, fear God, and keep His commandments. Y'all have had VBS this week. Some of y'all looking worse for the wear. VBS is tough, isn't it? It's tough. But imagine if we taught and got through to some of those children that left here a minute ago and will be coming back after a while. Imagine if in that season we taught them that to fear God and keep His commandments was the whole duty of man. It would be worth it. So whatever season we're in, to everything there is a season. We may be planting. We may be tending, weeding, getting it all through. We may be harvesting. But to everything there is a season. And the great thing is, we can look at all of the writings of Solomon and see a great example for us. Even in his weakness. That's one of the most beautiful things about the Bible, is it lets you see all of people. Good, bad, whatever it might be. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep His commandment, for this is the whole duty of man.